Hello. Today, I thought we could talk about as many books that I've read this year so far and see how many we can get through before my battery runs out. Hello again. This is me with no bangs. Do not be alarmed. I'm editing. I had dance today, so no bangs. As I was editing this, I realized that I did not give any information about these books at all, like what happens in them. So, my plan is, as I'm editing, to pop in and tell you about what happens in each book and how I found it, and if it's part of a StoryGraph challenge, and my rating. So, I hope that works out okay. The first book I read in January was Commonwealth by Anne Patchett, and I read it because I read Tom Lake last year and I really, really enjoyed Tom Lake. I gave it 5 stars. There was a relationship drama, there was a bit of a family drama. I stayed super late at the cafe I was at just to finish. But then Commonwealth, I don't know, it was like so Commonwealth is an older Anne Patchett book. I mentioned Tom Lake. Tom Lake came out in 2020. I think Commonwealth is from 2015, 2016. It's the story of two families in Southern California who come together through an affair. The parents have the affair. The children are then in each other's lives and become this kind of tangled web of a family. So it's basically about those characters as they grow up. I mentioned that I really enjoyed the beginning of the story later, and that first chapter like sets up how the affair happened and how the two families came together. I think it's in the 60s, and that was really great. I wish that that was like the story. In Tom Lake, one extended drama is very much the focal point of the whole story, whereas in Commonwealth, it seems like the instigating drama that sets up all of these people to be affected. You're introduced to it, but then we're focusing on the lives of those people afterwards. Whereas in Tom Lake, you're kind of going to the past, spending a lot of time there in the drama, in the thick of it. I had Commonwealth as part of the Book Nerd 2025 challenge for a book with a one-word title, and my rating for Commonwealth was 3.75 stars. I liked it in the beginning. The story was interesting, and then it got like progressively less interesting. And I think it's because there is like a plot with an older man. Okay, well, spoilers. If you want to read this book, don't listen to this part. But there's a part with like an older man romancing a younger woman in college, and it's just like, this is not the kind of romance I want to read about. Personally, what did I say in my review? I said I wanted more drama and less in between / aftermath of drama, and 10% less of the old man romancing a 25-year-old. Oh, and also I switched between audiobook and physical book for this. Like I would be biking places, listening to the audiobook, but then reading the book at home or like at a cafe, and that was confusing, and I think it let me not pay attention to things when I was audiobooking. So I think Anne Patchett is an eyeball author for me for future reference. The next book that I read was A Shady Hollow Mystery, #1, Shady Hollow. Shady Hollow is the first book in the Shady Hollow series, in which we are introduced to the village of Shady Hollow, a place where woodland creatures live together in harmony until a curmudgeonly toad turns up dead and the local reporter has to solve the case. The local reporter is a fox named Vera Vixen. I found this via StoryGraph recommendations. I think this was when the StoryGraph algorithm didn't really get me yet. It knew that I liked things that were self-aware, but I don't think it knew like genre-wise which kind of things. But I don't know, maybe it's because it was animals and I couldn't get past the animals being human. Maybe some people could read it and be fine, but
It didn't really work for me. I gave it a 2, and the challenge it was a part of was, again, the Book Nerd 2025 challenge. It fit the challenge prompt, a book with a prologue. I'll try to link my StoryGraph and also the challenges I mention in the description. So if you are also interested in joining some StoryGraph challenges and gamifying your reading to kind of make it more interactive and fun, that's really worked for me to get me reading more. Back to me in the past telling you about this book.
I don't really like mysteries. I gave Agatha Christie 3 stars last year, which, like, I know people have like different systems for rating things. For me, like, a 3-star means I kind of didn't really like it. I gave Shady Hollow a 2. I mean, it was like cute. The story was kind of silly, but I think it's not the genre for me. Like, if I'm giving Agatha Christie 3 stars, I don't think I'm the person you should be coming to for mystery recommendations, because she's like the queen of the genre. I said, in the past year of reading, I've learned I am a certified murder mystery hater, so I should stop trying to read them at this point. Yeah, I think it's not for me. Although maybe we'll get to it, but later this year I did read a historical murder mystery, kind of, and I kind of liked that. So, next was a book club book. It was Come and Get It by Kylie Reed. I'm the one who put this on the book club list of books.
It's about this resident assistant named Millie. She's very studious, hardworking, paying her way through school. This professor comes in doing research about, I guess it's like social research. She needs to interview college students, so Millie helps get her some students to interview who are her residents in the dorm. But then it's kind of like people behaving badly. Millie may be making questionable decisions. You learn about the backstories of these residents a bit. So yeah, not a lot happens. It's very much a character study. I had this as part of the Read the Rainbow Challenge for Green, and I found it via StoryGraph. Perhaps also booktube. Also, I listened to this via audiobook, and it was a great audiobook.
I gave it a 3.5. I think it picked up at the end and got interesting, but it was very boring. This was also so specific to going to college in like 2016. Oh, sorry, 2017. I know this because I was in college in 2017 and it felt so real. Like, these girls were real. The way they talked was real. I could imagine the dorm room. I could imagine the situation. Like, I was thinking of my freshman year roommate situation and the people across the hall. Like, was anyone else? Did anyone else just have a very memorable, formative social dynamic in their freshman year? I guess most people do, because it's such a big change for a lot of people to move to college. I gave it 3.5 stars because the first 70% of the book is real loosey goosey. I didn't have a good time, but I think she did really stick the landing with it. If I hadn't had committed to it for book club, and if I hadn't been the one for book club to suggest it, I probably would have DNF'd it. I did find it unnervingly realistic, so maybe I would have stayed to keep getting the 2017 dorm experience. Yeah, Kylie Reed, I'm interested to look at more from her, but also I think this seems kind of like her style. It's like very character heavy, not a lot happens, which I can like books like that. I usually do like books like that, but this felt like maybe it was trying to have a plot, maybe. I don't know. I think it took me a while to get on the same wavelength. Maybe if I came across a book again, I would read it, but I don't think I would like go out of my way. The next book I read was The Lying Life of Adults by Elena Ferrante. Elena Ferrante. Hold, please.
My name is Anne Goldstein, and I'm here to talk about the novels of Elena Ferrante because I'm the translator from Italian.
Elena Ferrante.
So, The Lying Life of Adults is a coming of age story about this girl, Giovanna. and she has this aunt who she doesn't really know anything about. Her father is estranged from the aunt. I believe they haven't been speaking for some time, but Giovanna is really curious about this aunt, so she kind of asks her dad if she can meet her. It's kind of about growing up and the people you idealize, seeing your parents as people, seeing the people you idolize as people. There's some boys that she starts dating, being involved with. Yeah, it's coming of age and very, very accurate, like the teenage voice. I think this is her only book that focuses on like a younger protagonist. I think the author was already on my radar. She's like very famous, but I needed a book with lie in it for the Booksandlala Buzzword Challenge. The February buzzword was something with truth and lie, and I gave it 5 stars. It was great.
This was my first 5-star of 2025. A 5-star for me is not necessarily that I had like a great time, but I was engrossed in the characters. I needed to know what happened next. I was really in the world and I was really living in the story. It's very much like about a young woman's coming of age as she realizes her parents aren't perfect and the people she would like to be perfect aren't perfect, and everything is complicated and gross, and boys are weird, and all that kind of coming of age stuff. But I did really like it, so 5 stars. I related to being a surly teenager. The next book was Solo Dance by Lee Kotomi. So oh my god, my battery is dying. Guys, this is so stressful.
So Solo Dance is listed as a powerful novel about the LGBTQ rights movement and gay love in Japan and Taiwan from the most important queer voice of East Asia's millennial generation. So it follows this main character who she's 27, originally from Taiwan, working an office job in Tokyo. And while she's living her office worker life, she has to keep her romantic and personal life a secret. And she also has been keeping secret the violent experience she had in Taiwan that prompted her to move to Tokyo. There are flashbacks to her time in Taiwan as a college student, maybe a high schooler. She has these diaries that a therapist has her write, because that's another big theme in the book is mental illness and definitely depression, this obsession with death. You might have guessed that from the cover. I found this because the StoryGraph genre challenge for 2025, which StoryGraph will also has challenges that they host. I think it's Around the World or Reading the World, a genre challenge, and an onboarding challenge. I'm doing all 3 because I love challenges and winning. The genre challenge has a prompt that's a literary or contemporary novel in translation, and I think I found this through books that other people had added, perhaps. Or honestly, I might have already had it on my TBR and it was just a translated novel. And I think also I was traveling to Japan at this time, so I chose this book, which is set in Japan, and I gave it 2.25 stars.
Lee Kotomi, Solo Dance. I gave it 2.25 stars. I didn't really like it. I was confused because the reviews were very much like, oh my god, this is such a great book, at the risk of being a hater, which I am. It's just, from what I understand, this was written in someone's second language and then translated into English, and it kind of felt that kind of level of remove from maybe the original idea that was inspiring the writer. I said it felt kind of utilitarian. Like, there were some really nice and beautiful moments. I really enjoyed there were parts where there was like diary entries, I guess, and that felt like the medium and the message were like totally aligned. Okay, I had to charge because apparently 30% is way too low to start recording something. I'm learning, I'm growing. So I was talking about solo dance. Yeah, it felt 2 times translated, and I liked the diary moments. The medium and the message were just clicking really well. Like, something about the writing itself was so removed from what was obviously a very emotional experience. So I don't know if that's supposed to say something about the character, or I don't have a lot of knowledge about Taiwanese literature or Taiwanese queer literature specifically. And I know that it did reference those things. So maybe I was missing a lot. I probably was. So there were moments in the text that kind of like referred to other Taiwanese authors, and it felt nice to be let in with an explainer there. But then that same kind of like explanatory, I read this in February, so I'm trying to think. It was very, how did we get from point A to point B? These kind of details that are like, oh, she's been living in Tokyo for a long time. But it's not like implied. It literally says, because she's been living in Tokyo for a long time. You know what? I'm going to read the specific line. She was surprised she knew the subway was still running. She had only been living in Tokyo for 3 years. Oh, and there was also like just convenient plot details. Like there's a part at the end where it's like, and then these people who there's no, like statistically, it's so impossible that they would be where they are. It's just like, okay. I mean, it seemed like other people really liked it though. So maybe if you are looking for queer Taiwanese literature or lesbian literature specifically. My rankings are in relation to other books I've read, and I just didn't enjoy this as much as other books. And I didn't like the writing, so that's why I gave it 2.25 stars. The next was the first in a series of bangers, Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. I had never read T. Kingfisher before. I think this was a book that StoryGraph specifically recommended to me.
It was not recommended by StoryGraph. This was from BookTube. It is a Sleeping Beauty retelling where there's this magical creature girl named Toadling who is guarding the Sleeping Beauty tower. It's short, and I added it to the Buzzword cover challenge for February, which was a cover featuring a skyline. I don't think I read this in February, but I'm letting myself do the Buzzword cover challenge and the Buzzword challenge whenever I get around to it. As long as I get to it by the end of the year, I'll consider that a success. And I gave it 5 stars. That's why it's a banger. I probably should have said that when I first started calling it a banger.
It was really short. It was weird. It reminded me a lot of like a postmodern play. Like I was thinking of Waiting for Godot. My review said it's like the magnum opus of Tom Stoppard's Daughter, written after a really intense Middle Ages phase. But I love stuff like that. Like, I love something that's like really specific and rooted in history and weird. I love like postmodern weird stuff. Who are we? What's the purpose of any of this? Like, stripping things down to like the real essence of a thing. So, yeah, that was enjoyable. I liked it a lot, and I would like to read more from T. Kingfisher. After Thornhedge, I read The House of My Mother, which is Sherry Frankie's memoir. If you have heard of this book, you probably know all about it. If you haven't and you like learning about fringe religious beliefs and cults, it's a really interesting deep dive. Basically, Sherry is the author, and she grew up as the daughter of a mommy vlogger, Ruby Frankie, and the whole Frankie family grew up Mormon. But then Ruby got really into this life coach, therapist person's preachings, and that person was Jodi Hildebrandt. And so Ruby and Jodi kind of team up and become a real nightmare to their children. Not that like Ruby wasn't already kind of awful to her kids, but you see it just gets worse. Like I remember I was listening to the audiobook and I was just so wrapped up in Sherry's story and her childhood, and I audibly gasped when Jodi entered the picture in the story, because I totally forgot that this was about Jodi and Ruby. Like I was just thinking, wow, this was bad. Yeah, Ruby was a bad parent, but then it gets worse. It gets worse.
The channel was 8 passengers. She becomes involved with Jodi Hildebrandt, and her already abusive tendencies become much worse. And unfortunately, it wound up taking a true crime turn where the authorities were called and the children were removed from the care of Ruby and Jodi. Jodi got Ruby and her husband to kind of separate, and then they moved in together, even though Jodi's supposedly her therapist. So yeah, culty, true crimey, and this is a good book to learn about it from because it's actually written by one of the children who was involved. I mean, not in the crimes that happened where the authorities were called, but she saw this all happen firsthand, basically. So yeah, I found out about this because I, for some reason, am on ex-religious YouTube, and this was a really big thing that people were talking about. I joined actually for the StoryGraph challenge. It was the bonus prompt for the onboarding challenge, which was read a book as part of a read along. So there was some people online who made a read along for this. I'd never used that feature before, but it's kind of like as you read through a book and you're tracking the percentage that you've gone through on StoryGraph, you then gain access to like a form. It's like a locked form. And then once you read that part of the book, you can then go in and discuss what happened with other people on StoryGraph. So that was super cool to learn about that feature. And that's the whole point of the onboarding challenge, is to get people exploring different parts of the app. And yes, I gave it 5 stars. Not because I like that this happened, but because it was a really wonderful reclaiming of the narrative and amazing audiobook. Sherry Frankie did a great job.
And then there's also like content about an older male figure in her church community, I think, who kind of ingratiated himself with Sherry and groomed her. It was really gross, but it was so beautiful to hear. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was an excellent book. And I hate Derek, and I'm glad Ruby and Jodi are in prison. And I hope that Sherry never has to be online ever again.
You are going to hear me talk about my year of rest and relaxation, but I am looking at notes that I made after I filmed this, which is why I'm showing up so much. This is a book I used to see a lot, like on the subway when it came out. I was living in New York and people would just be carrying it everywhere. I was really burnt out because I was in school, so I could not even think about reading anything outside of coursework. But yeah, it was definitely a zeitgeisty book. But once I started my StoryGraph, it was one of the first things I added to my TBR there because I definitely did want to read it. The StoryGraph challenge I added it to was wrong answers only for the prompt, a textbook or how-to guide. That's such a good challenge, wrong answers only, because the person who created it specifically was like, we've all been there when you're in a StoryGraph prompt and somebody adds the most random thing to a prompt that in no way, shape, or form answers the prompt. It's like, why are you doing this? What is this book? Can you read? So I thought it was very silly that the intention is you're supposed to give a wrong answer. Anyway, 5 stars. And I'm going to talk more about it.
So the last book that I read in my 5-star banger streak was My Year of Rest and Relaxation. It's basically about a woman who is depressed and decides maybe if she just sleeps for a year, things will be better. So there's a lot of drugs. She's very privileged, so if you don't like unlikable characters, you probably won't like this because she's very kind of insufferable and annoying. She has a friend who she's kind of shitty to. I found it was very true to the privileged New York experience. The kind of art scene that she's talking about, it feels very real. Like, these are real types of people. I think the writing was incredible. And yeah, it's just about this very unlikable woman's spiritual awakening. I would recommend it a lot. It's popular for a reason. So the 5-star streak, Thornhedge, The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie, and then My Year of Rest and Relaxation. And then there is kind of one more 5-star tacked on, which I'm not really going to count as part of the streak because it was a children's book. I read it to complete the StoryGraph onboarding challenge. There will be different prompts, and one of them was to read a children's book written in recent years, I think, by an author of color. So I read There Was a Party for Langston by Jason Reynolds. And it was very cute. It was very lyrical. I feel like it would be so fun to read out loud with children. I used to work in a preschool, and this would have been so fun. I don't really know a ton about Langston Hughes. I don't think I've read, he was a poet, right? I don't think I've read anything by him. I've not intentionally read anything by Langston Hughes, so maybe I should. Obviously, you hear the name, you know he is a big figure in literary history. The illustrations were so cute, and it was just really nice and heartwarming. And I liked it. I would recommend it. If you have any preschoolers in your life, maybe get them this book. The next book was Welcome to the Hyunam-dong Bookshop. We read this for book club. Apparently, other people really liked this book in my book club. I only gave it 2.75 stars. So it's not like the worst book I've read, but it's definitely not my style or taste. You're learning about a community that pops up around a bookstore. It's basically a K-drama as a book, but with significantly less romance. So if that's the reason you watch K-dramas, you're probably not going to be too happy with this. I said in my review, it's about as deep as you would expect a serialized Korean show to get. And I don't think that's like because it's a Korean show. I think it's because it's kind of like pop media, you know, like I'm just thinking of the kind of stuff that gets aired in the US on like ABC. I think it's supposed to appeal to a lot of people, so it doesn't really get specific. Like, it gets specific to the characters, but it's very intentional about making these broader connections to the wider world instead of like letting you maybe go deep into the story and draw some connections, because you're very much like in the heads of the characters as they're philosophizing about life. There's one drama that I kept thinking about. I think it's Romance is a Bonus book. Lee Jung-suk was in it, and there's like, and it's like a workplace romance. But I remember there would be like these quotes from like, this French guy said this about life. And like, you know how, if you've ever seen a K-drama, you probably know what I'm talking about, where there will be like the character doing a voiceover near the end of the episode, and they're like quoting Goethe or something, meandering, but a little bit surface level. It was definitely focused on the characters, this cozy community that's built around this bookshop. I did enjoy that, but then I would be like skimming through paragraphs of people finding out the meaning of life. And these are people who have just discovered that they can disappoint their parents. I mean, like, I've been a disappointment to my parents for years. So kind of boring to me personally. But if you are someone who would find that really validating and like sweet, you'd probably enjoy it. I think I'm a bit pessimistic and jaded. One of the alternate names for this channel that I came up with was Jaded Old Hag, which is funny because I'm not old, but I definitely feel jaded and old sometimes when I look at trends online. So I think this was one of those books that was very popular online, but maybe it's not for me.
The StoryGraph challenge I had the Hyunam-dong Bookshop for was the Buzzword cover challenge, because the March prompt was a cover featuring books. And like I said, it was 2.75 stars. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is Fierce Attachments by Vivian Gornick.
Born and raised in the Bronx, the daughter of urban peasants, Gornick grows up in a household dominated by her intelligent but uneducated mother's romantic depression over the early death of her husband. Next door lives Nettie, an attractive widow whose calculating sensuality appeals greatly to Vivian. These women, with their opposing models of femininity, continue well into adulthood to affect Gornick's struggle to find herself in love and in work.
So yeah, that's a bit about Vivian Gornick's upbringing. Apparently, this is one of the books that kickstarted the memoir boom. I don't know who wrote this back of the book, but according to them, this book helped start the memoir boom. And I found it via StoryGraph because of the Book Nerd 2025 challenge. There was a prompt that is a biography or memoir published before 2000. So this is published in the 80s. I want to say 1987, but that could easily be wrong. Google it, pick it up. Great book. You're going to hear me talk about it.
I'm back to 5 stars for Fierce Attachments by Vivian Gornick. I finished this at the end of February. I was listening to it as an audiobook, and I didn't really know a lot about Vivian Gornick other than what was on the back of the book. I was able to place her time-wise in like a general timeline of feminism, but I hadn't really heard her name before. 5 stars for me means I am engrossed. And this was definitely that. I loved hearing the author read it. It was recorded recently, I think, but the book itself was written in the 80s. So she was reading decades after she had written it. I think she's in her 80s now. So you can hear this real texture to her voice. And I really enjoyed it. It was just like, you're listening to this wise woman reflect on her life. And even though she didn't have any additional commentary from this 2022 self of her, I felt like she was reflecting as she was reading. Maybe she wasn't, but it felt like that. So she did a great job. Her writing is super vivid. It takes you back to her childhood in New York in like these tenement apartments, living with her mom, who was very much like a woe is me, my life is so hard type of person. But her insights, like Vivian Gornick's insights into her life, even as you hear her describe herself in her 20s and 30s doing kind of messy stuff, and you're just like, girl, what are you doing? She has such insight to her thought process. As she's reading, I was just like humming out loud, like, yes. Like very much like a snap, 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 except I'm just washing dishes. So I'm just like, yes. It reminds me of being in college and idolizing like older female academics, being like, you know the answers to everything. Please tell me. You can kind of tell by the title, Fierce Attachments, it's a telling of these kind of strained but very important and intense, unbreakable relationships she has with women in her life, specifically in her family. It's the attachment between Vivian Gornick and her mom, and then Vivian Gornick and this neighborhood woman who becomes a family friend, and also the relationship between the neighborhood woman and her mom. And it's all very intense. I love you. I hate you. I can't live without you. So yeah, if you are really into like family dramas, or you have tense relationships with women in your life, maybe you would really relate to this. I'm gonna talk about the closing image. So I don't think this spoils the book, but if you don't want to hear about it, maybe you can skip forward. She ends the book as like a 40-something-year-old woman with her mom, who is now in her 80s or older. And it's summer. They're in a different apartment. But as she narrates, you can just feel like, here I am sitting on the couch in this same dynamic with my mom that I had as a teenager, as a child, 40, 30 years ago. And in this just realization of like, holy shit, like she's really spent 40 years of her life with this intense dynamic. Really, really striking image. Anyway, okay. Next was my first book of March, Company of Liars by Karen Maitland. This is the mystery I was talking about. It's kind of like a historical fiction mystery. It's set in the Middle Ages. It follows a band of travelers as they move through England trying to avoid the Black Plague.
Let me read the summary from the publisher. The year is 1348. In a world ruled by faith and fear, 9 desperate strangers, brought together by chance, attempt to flee the certain death that is rolling inexorably towards them. Each traveler has a hidden gift, a dark secret. None are as they seem, and one among them conceals the darkest secret of all, propelling these liars to a destiny more perilous than any of them could imagine. I found this via StoryGraph recommendations, which I do not think I would have come across this without StoryGraph because it was published in 2007. I think they do the recommendations based on your reading preferences, and then I had been using StoryGraph for a few months, perhaps maybe a year when I added this. The challenge I added it for was the Buzzword cover challenge for January, which was the cover featuring a pattern. You might notice I don't do the buzzword challenges in order because my brain is very chaotic and I'm not gonna succeed in the challenges if I make it so I have to do each month in the month. I'm just trying to get through the year, you know? And maybe I'll complete it next year. Who knows? But I would like to complete the challenge specifically this year because it stops counting it for the challenge once it's after December 31st. If I read this in March and it's for the January prompt, nobody cares, nobody knows. And you only know because I'm telling you this.
I was hooked. It was so close to 5 stars. The things that took it from 5 stars was that the pacing at the end was kind of ridiculous. There's kind of an unsatisfying cut and then a jump forward. So I didn't love that. And then also there was a twist with one of the main characters. Well, there were 2 big twists. One I kind of saw coming. The other I had no indication of and I was very confused by. But otherwise, this was really, really interesting. It was super well researched. There is historically accurate bigotry. So if that's going to bum you out, I would suggest maybe not reading this one. I started reading it physically, but I switched to audiobook. The person who did the audiobook did a great job narrating. It was very much like an oral storytelling kind of vibe, you know. I felt very going back in time. I'm walking around my neighborhood. I remember I was walking home from the grocery store at night. I get to the gate at my house. The person who lives on the first floor, this older woman, she was in the gate, but there was no light on. So I just saw this shadow and I'm listening to this very spooky mystery story. I was so scared. She really, I think I jumped and maybe scared her. I thought that I hated murder mysteries, but it turns out they just need to be historical fiction murder mysteries. So if anyone has recommendations for immersive historical fiction murder mysteries, please let me know because I might like it. But yeah, the insane ending, pacing wise, and some kind of twists made it lose a few points. So it was only 4.5 stars, but I did really, really enjoy it. Okay, so after Company of Liars, still in March, I read Funny Story by Emily Henry, which I gave 4 stars.
If you're watching this video, I would assume you know Emily Henry and Funny Story, but just in case you don't, it's a fake dating trope story about 2 people who were both dumped by their fiancés because their respective fiancés went to go together and get married because they were childhood friends. So we have the main character Daphne, who then needs a place to stay, winds up moving in with Miles, who conveniently just broke up with his fiancée because their fiancés are now together. And then they decide to maybe try and make their exes jealous and maybe fall in love. So yeah, that's Funny Story. I feel like everyone on BookTube, on the internet, even if you're not on BookTube, I feel like Emily Henry is probably also popular with moms who don't know how to watch a YouTube. It's the internet's favorite romance author, Emily Henry. So I think the reason I read this one was because it was a lighter rom-com book that was available on Libby, and it was in one of my challenges already, which was the StoryGraph's Onboarding Challenge 2025. Prompt number 4, read a book from the Similar Users Loved recommendation segment. I think I had gone through the Onboarding Challenge and put in all the books like early in January. So this was already on my list in a challenge and waiting to be read by me. And I gave it 4 stars.
I really enjoyed it. It was sweet. This is my second Emily Henry book. I liked it a lot more than the first one I read. The first one was Book Lovers, I think. I'm not like a huge fan of romance, but I mean, Emily Henry is very popular for a reason. She's a good writer. Her stories have other things going for them. It's not just focused on the main 2 characters who are falling in love. I really liked the community that you got to learn about. And this one, the thing that I did not like was this bizarre physical touch habit. This book, it was wrist circling. Like, what? What does that even mean? Like, he's just like circling her wrist? Is it like they're holding hands and like is that not is that not insane to anyone else? I don't get it. Anyway, the other book I wrote it in my review is that in Book Lovers it was face cupping. So in that book the guy kept cupping her face and I just kept thinking, "Oh my god, if you touch my face, I'm gonna break out. So keep your hands to yourself, okay?" All that being said, I can't say I hated it. I really liked it. It was a 4 star. 4 stars is pretty good for me. I love the characters. I loved it a lot more than Book Lovers. The community was so sweet. The backstory of her working as a librarian felt very believable and she felt very integrated in the community, whereas if you've read Book Lovers, she kind of falls into the community, but I liked that in Funny Story, she's kind of already in it. It felt less forced. The other thing I didn't really like was there's a part of the story towards the end where the characters are sharing their family traumas. And I don't know if it's a genre thing that like reading sad family backstory stuff in a romance is just not going to give the same type of effect that reading someone like Vivian Gornick, who is like very in the relationship, talk about the dynamics of it in a way that feels, I don't know, like maybe Emily Henry does have some kind of tragic family backstory, but it kind of felt to me like she had a good childhood and was trying to write a character who didn't have one. But I don't know, maybe it's just hard to write about this topic in romance. It felt more believable coming from the main character, Daphne. It did feel kind of forced coming from the male main character. I guess it's just because like we're not in his head, so you're not like hearing him think about it. It's just like suddenly he's talking about it at the end. But yeah, I liked it. 4 stars. I'm excited to read more Emily Henry. I'm becoming Emily Henry pilled. So, woo. Also in March, I read the audiobook for Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. 5 stars. It was so good. It's not that long. It's only like 3.5 hours. It's the story of him kind of growing up. It's addressed to his son, who I think was a teenager at the time that it was published. But it's like a personal story that very much frames a wider cultural story of America. I also had this as part of a StoryGraph challenge. Somebody made a very funny challenge, very funnily named. The challenge name is Call Us HOTTOGO, the way we're cooked. And it's basically a bunch of prompts to get you to read fiction or nonfiction that is critical of the alt-right leaning tendencies of America. Between the World and Me was my completion book for prompt number 2. Actually, Alan, that's not true. The prompt was to read a book that peels back a layer to reveal the truth behind a piece of all-American propaganda.
I forgot to mention one of the funniest things about this challenge, which is the description added by the user. Username is maryshelleywasright. To quote Green Day, F America. Books can be nonfiction or fiction, or even some secret third thing. I'm not a cop. And I gave this 5 stars. I didn't actually say that. I'll read some of the description for you.
From the back of the book, the questions of what is it like to inhabit a Black body and find a way to live within it, and how can we all honestly reckon with this fraught history and free ourselves from its burden. Between the World and Me is Ta-Nehisi Coates' attempt to answer these questions in a letter to his adolescent son. So yeah, there's police violence that is discussed in this, but this is a really, really good book. I recommend it. So beautifully, beautifully written. It came out 10 years ago though, so maybe you already have. So I have 3 more books. The next book was Pure Nessie, 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this book. It was so creative. It's about this man, Pure Nessie, who is living in like this. It was making me think of, what's his name? Borges? Who's the guy that has like the Library of Infinity philosophical thought experiment of like a library that has every single book that ever existed or will exist?
I was right. It was the Borges short story, Library of Babel. I'll put some images here and also when I'm talking about it. But this was recommended to me by StoryGraph. I had also seen booksandlala mention it in her vlogs and videos. So then when StoryGraph recommended it, I was like, I know this. I'm going to try it. And it was spot on. I gave it 5 stars. The challenge it was a part of was StoryGraph's Onboarding Challenge 2025 for prompt number 3. Read a book chosen by the random pick generator found in the up next suggestions. So StoryGraph recommended it. It was on my TBR. And then their random pick generator chose it for me to put on my up next pile.
Fascinating concept, great execution, well written, a good story. It was a bit of a thriller, and it was just like perfect pacing, really good. I feel like I'm just saying, it's good. I liked it. Oh my gosh, this is going to take forever. And my battery is about to die again. So maybe this is it for me. 2 more books. I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. If you're on BookTube, you've probably seen people talk about this. We read it for book club. I gave it 4.25 stars. I get bummed out really easily by dystopian stuff, so I didn't really like it. But like, I could recognize that there's value in engaging with dystopian literature and blah, 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 blah. I listened to the audiobook. It was a bummer. But specifically at the end of the book, there is an afterword that goes more into about the author and the context of her life and history. She was a psychoanalyst, which I studied comp lit. I was very much like, oh yeah, this makes sense. I could smell it from a mile away. Very much like into people's psyches and like analyzing the psyche of culture and all this stuff. I think that's why it's such a dense, chewy book, you know, like it gives you something to think about and chew on. Yeah, it was so depressing. I'm already depressed. I was like, why am I reading this? But yeah, in that afterword, whoever wrote it talks about either the author's parents or the author as a child with her parents escaped Nazi Germany as a Jewish family. That was very interesting in light of the book being something about you emerge to a world that has radically changed and looks nothing like anything you've ever known.
The challenge I put I Who Have Never Known Men for was the StoryGraph Reads the World challenge, because I realized that Jacqueline Hartman is from Belgium, and Belgium is one of the countries on that. So I actually just recently realized it fit for that. And like I said, 4.25 stars.
Okay, and the last book of March was an audiobook, Ultra Processed People, Why We Can't Stop Eating Food That Isn't Food. This was 11 hours, like a regular audiobook length, but it took me 2 library borrows to finish it because it gets a bit depressing. The guy who wrote it, Chris Van Tolkien, he says that, oh, it's fine. I'm not going to tell you to like only eat organic. Continue to eat whatever you want as you read this. But like, as I talk about these things, you're probably going to naturally get kind of disgusted with it. And he was right. It's kind of irritating that I've read this book because now I'm like, I guess I have to cook. Like, I hate cooking, but now basically my takeaway is there are so many additives in packaged food and like pre-made food and even restaurant food, like franchises and stuff. So the only way to know what you're actually eating is to make it yourself and like go through the pain of using fresh ingredients, and it is more expensive and it is harder to do, and that's why health disparities in society are so directly related to someone's economic status. Kind of a bummer. If you feel like you're not in a place where you have the wherewithal or energy to kind of change your habits, maybe you wouldn't want to read this. The person who recommended this book to me said that they couldn't finish it because as they were reading, they were getting so depressed and they already have a hard time just getting stuff done, and their therapist was like, maybe you just stop reading the book. So if that sounds like you, maybe skip it. But 5 stars because wow, it totally effectively changed my outlook on food. But it was like not in a shamey way. Like the author very much shares about his own experiences with UPF food product and how it is hard to escape even for him, and he knows all this stuff and he talks about his own experience with it. So it feels very much like I understand how hard this is and I know how frustrating it is and it's so overwhelming. I just want to give you the information and then you can do with it what you will. It was nice to hear from somebody who had that kind of mindset. It was a bit jargony at times and kind of like rabbit holey on specific topics, but overall I learned a lot. I came away feeling empowered and also kind of motivated to cook more and buy groceries instead of just getting delivery and going out to restaurants all the time, which is good for my health, as I learned in the book, but also good for my wallet.
I'm back for the last time, I swear. I didn't mention the challenge. This was part of StoryGraph's Onboarding Challenge 2025, which the prompt was read a book in your least read genre, which for me, when I set this up in January, was science. I think I've read other science books, nonfiction books since then. Okay, bye.
So that was January to March. I'm going to stop here because I've been talking for so long. Hopefully you heard of some books that interested you maybe, and thank you for watching. Okay. Bye.